discoveries, the Banu actually don't really care that much. They actually care more about the discovery more than the person who made it. So the example I always kind of go back to is if you think at some point, basically a Banu engineer developed a thruster that was better than the contemporary thrusters that were being used at the time. So everyone goes, wow, this thruster is really cool. It's more efficient, it's more powerful, it's whatever sort of quality it has that sort of makes it excel over the sort of existing technology, they latch onto and they go, okay, this is going to be our new thruster design. So they maintain the sort of design of the thruster, how to build it, how it works, all that type of stuff. But the actual sort of name of or importance of who designed it sort of gets lost. So basically they'll pass down the design, but after a certain amount of time, no one kind of remembers who built it because the thruster is sort of the important thing that matters.
Yes, I better understand now why the Star Citizen use so much time to design all this very nice spaceships, because this is how we're getting around in this big multi-crew spaceship that will travel hours and hours to explore new star systems. Yes, I call it sun, a star in the sun. I think it's called a sun system, but we can call it a star. A sun is a star. Yes. But that will we use all this nice ship, big multi-crew explore ship to travel to explore all these star systems, asteroid belts, do scanning and mining and getting fuel, and that will be huge. So I understand why they're spending so much time on the design of the nice spaceship. Of course, this is how we are getting around, and I think this is a brilliant idea to crowdfunding the game, to sailing the spaceships. Yes, that's very good, because you get a super nice spaceship you can use in the alpha game with a friend, and multi-crew ships. But it's 2:10 a.m. in the morning, so I will keep my voice down.
So yeah, so basically it's fun. It puts a nice little spin on them as far as a culture that makes it feel a little bit more alien to us, and it's a slight degree of separation, but it really adds a lot of character to it, which is really fun. So anyway, you take that thinking and that approach to history, and you multiply it by the fact that currently we're sort of thinking that the Banu have a relatively shorter lifespan than humans do. So there's a kind of a much faster turnover rate as far as sort of generations go. So you have more generations that have passed since they've basically been expanding out among the stars and among different star systems and stuff like that. And so at a certain point, it just sort of, that information of where they originally came from kind of slips into history, and no one really knows or cares kind of where they came from. So if you basically asked the Banu like where their home world was, they would probably respond with whatever planet they were born on, or correct you if they were born on a spaceship. But again, it's just sort of a fun, interesting thing about the Banu and how they view the world. And also as a fun sidestep, we sort of expanded that to the idea that it expands to contracts as well. So the Banu has these sort of guilds that they operate on called Sulis, and so if you form a business arrangement with the Suli, and then the Suli changes ownership because the original owner dies, then you have to renegotiate that contract with the new one because they are considered a new entity. So by extension, we sort of joke around that the interstellar, peace and trade accord that the Banu signed with the humans has to be renegotiated every, couple decades, because basically there's a new power structure, and who were like, well, we didn't sign that old one, so, we got to do it again. which I imagine would be super frustrating for our government. Anyway, so getting back on topic, probably the reason why the UEE, who are actually, the other joke is that the UEE and the Xi'an are probably the best chroniclers of Banu history, because they do place an emphasis on people and stuff like that. So the best historical lineage as far as that type of stuff would probably be either UEE or Xi'an. But anyway, so why Bacchus 2? Why is this the leading candidate for the Banu homeworld? Well, they have a practice known as gatherings, which, to give, again, another brief overview, the Banu sort of arrange themselves in sort of what's the Banu Protectorate is a series of systems under Banu control, and all the planets sort of operate like city-states. So they all have kind of their own kind of unique rules and sort of way that they do things. But if the situation arises that basically not threatens necessarily, but affects the entire species, something that they need to kind of come together on to make a decision about, i.e., first contact with humans, that type of thing, they would need to call a gathering, which would be a collection of all of the sort of leaders of these various planets to get together, present the situation, and then they figure out a way to move forward. And so Bacchus 2, for example, is the site of where they host these gatherings. So there seems to be some kind of import on the world, and so basically the UAE strongly suspects that that's why it might be their home world, because they're like, there has to be a reason why they're having it here, so maybe that's it. It's also actually probably good to mention as well that, looking at the star map and stuff like that, we have Bacchus 1, Bacchus 2, Bacchus A, Bacchus B, all that type of stuff. And we don't have any alien words. They probably will get alien names once we actually kind of develop the language a bit more. We've just been trying to minimize it so we don't kind of constrain the construction of the language. So, we could kind of come up with kind of sort of nonsense words, but we don't want to kind of imply a sort of syntax or vernacular or stuff like that to the language before it gets properly developed. Moving on from Bacchus 2, while I said that that was the only inhabited planet in the system, it's not the only population center. So particularly if you poke around some of the other Banu systems, you'll see these little flotillas over here, which are basically, the idea was that these would be sort of sprawling space stations that would act as trading hubs for people passing through the system. So this is the Bacchus Flotilla, which again would probably get sort of a more Banu appropriate name once we kind of work out the language. But again, the idea is that this would be sort of like a massive sort of floating marketplace. I kept imagining something similar to like the raft from Snow Crash, if you've read that. If not, I highly recommend it. But again, we'll sort of see how it develops once the sort of art team really kind of sinks their teeth into it. And so moving on, and then finally, you've got your asteroid system here. Again. So you got the asteroid system here, and then last but not least, we have Bacchus 3, which is sort of a massive gas giant that's all by its lonesome out there on the fringe of the system. So that's basically Bacchus in a nutshell. Again, some of the details about the various planets might shift once the artists and designers actually begin to build out the system. But sort of the core idea that for this place is that it's going to be one of the sort of central hubs of the Banu Protectorate. Even though it might not technically be the sort of homeworlds of the Banu, we're kind of viewing it as sort of one of the main nexus points for the Banu Protectorate. So from a meta level, it kind of is their homeworld, even though it's not legitimately their homeworld. But we want it to be that sort of like that classic example of like the vibrant, dangerous Banu worlds where, everything has a price. There's like that possibility for adventure and mystery and all that kind of cool stuff going on. So yeah, I would highly recommend, if you're not familiar with it, I would definitely poke around here and poke around the star map in general. Of course, if you have questions or comments, feel free to track me or any of the other lore team down in the Ask a Dev section on Spectrum. And as always, a big thanks to our subscribers whose contributions allow us to do this extra level of community engagement. And of course, a big thank you to all of our backers who are helping us build this amazing game. And that's pretty much it. This has been Lore Maker's Guide to the Galaxy. I'm Dave Haddock, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. For the latest and greatest in Star Citizen Squadron 42,
Yes, that's Chris
subscribe
Roberts.
to our channel, or you can check out some of the other shows. And you can also head to our website at www.robertspaceindustriescom. Thank you very much for watching.
Canoe. It's like the canoe, like for a lake. But you cannot always just copy. It's not always working, this copy paste. Try again. Yes. That's canoe, not canoe. Yes, I take my keyboard, lead F11 full screen. I'm just lazy. Yes, I should keep the keyboard in my bed for now. Yes, that's the canoe. Oh, that was very close to the sun, so I don't think anyone lives there. Oh, I had to click. It's a little bit hard. I need to click this control disk. Like this. Planet Meteors. Habitats, no. Application way information. No, but I live there. This tidally locked mesoplanet rapidly orbits. Routing. I don't know what this is. Yes, that's too close for the sun for anyone. That's a planet. Cater. Yes, ocean planets. Big ocean planets. Asteroid belts. I have only this small planet around the stars. Nobody is too hot. And have ocean planets. That's the only one. Yes, have another planet. I think that's kind of icy planets. Smog planets. Habitat, no. Home to a small research station looking into terraforming smog planets. So that's a very remote star system. Have only this water planets and a small control post on this. And I have asteroid belts. Very nice. It's a nice map. It's well made. And give them a like.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Loremaker's Guide to the Galaxy. I am the Archivist Sherry Heiberg. For those who've never seen Loremaker's Guide to the Galaxy, this is a segment in which the writers of CIG go over the history and formation of the systems that we plan to put in Star Citizen the game. Now that we've gotten that very important introduction out of the way, I would like to tell you about the Kano system, which is not spelled like or associated with the Mortal Kombat character. So, brief history of Kano system, kind of brief introduction to the whole deal, is that it was discovered in 2463 by Tabitha Castor during the early days of Project Farstar. For those of us who are familiar with our timeline, you know that 2463 is pretty soon after 2438, which is when we had first contact with the Banu. Now, because of the sudden knowledge that we were not alone in the universe, sentience-wise, humanity just was like, oh man, we gotta colonize as many worlds as possible. And they really kicked it into gear after the successful colonization of Virgil. Farstar specifically was a push to find and settle on frontier worlds, which were basically worlds that we only had like one jump point to, that were kind of on the outskirts of UE territory. And Tabitha Castor, who couldn't really do anything, she was very sick, she couldn't really get on spaceships or go flying. So what she would do is she would purchase raw scanner data from ships returning from frontier worlds like Virgil, Davian, and Bremen, and she would kind of manually comb through them to find evidence that there might be jump points. She successfully did this, and then she commissioned nav jumper Jamel Normand to confirm that the jump point had indeed been discovered. He took a chance on her, and they in turn discovered jump point to Kano together. The system is named after both of them. It's a portmanteau of their last names, Castor and Normand, K-No. And, yep, that's pretty much the end of the brief history of the system. With that out of the way, let's go and zoom in on the star. The star is a G-type main sequence star, which I've talked about before. Sort of like our sun is a G-type main sequence star. The interesting thing about these stars, which I don't know if I've touched on before, is that more and more evidence is showing that it's kind of weird for life to form around stars like this. One of the prevailing hypotheses is that life is probably going to be much more commonly found around K-type stars, which are one step down on the main sequence. They're cooler, they're longer lived, they don't emit as much harmful radiation, like UV radiation, which, as you know, will give us skin cancer if we have too much of it. For more information on this, I really recommend seeking out the article Our Sun May Not Be Ideal for Alien Life by Lisa Grossman. You can find it on the onlines. And all this is to say that because of this information, we had no way of really knowing that there might be life forming in this system. Let's visit Kano 1 before we touch on that whole mysterious life phrase. Kano 1 is a mesoplanet. It's tidally locked to the star. Tidal locking means that one side faces the sun at all times, which we're not communicating with the animation here, but we hope to one day. And a mesoplanet is a term that we borrowed from Isaac Asimov, which is a planet that's small enough to possibly be considered a dwarf planet, but it has cleared the neighborhood of any, like meteors or stuff like that, which is one of the requirements for a dwarf planet to be classified as a dwarf planet. Mercury, in our parlance that we've set up for this game, would be a mesoplanet. Kano 1 is worth visiting. However, it doesn't have any life on it because about half the world is magma and half the world is not. And in the solar terminus between the magma half and the not half, there are giant crystalline structures that are stories high. So absolutely worth checking out from space, just to take in that spectacular sight. Definitely not worth walking on the planet, though. It is, as I said, very hot. Let's pop over to Cartina.
Yes, this is ocean
Cartina
planet.
is an ocean planet. It does have life on it, however, it is microscopic. It's plankton, which was discovered by a researcher who was living on Kano 2 named Dr. Satomi Bechtel. She named this life form Canaliska. It's a little zooplankton. The plankton itself appears to exhibit farming behavior with algae and things, which was something...
So we need some boats.
Really, we hadn't
Star
seen before.
Citizen. If we have ocean planets, we need to have some boats on the
It triggered the
spaceships.
Fair Chance Act, which had been put in place some years before, and the people who had been on this world for quite some time, hundreds of years, who lived in sealed arcologies under the surface, had to fight for their rights to stay on the planet while still agreeing not to destroy the burgeoning life that was discovered by Dr. Bechtel. So, unfortunately, you can't migrate to Cartina nowadays because of the Fair Chance Act, but you can visit it. It's a very famous tourist destination. It's supposed to be beautiful, lovely ocean world. However, the atmosphere is toxic, hence people living in sealed arcologies under the surface. So if you want to visit Cartagena City, which is a bustling live place and has most of the population on the planet, you can absolutely do so. You could probably find mission givers, stuff to buy, things to do, all kinds of stuff. Hopefully when we get it in the game, it'll be a really interesting and weird place to go. Bioshock the planet, maybe, but without the objectivist philosophy. Let's move on, now that we have discussed this interesting planet, to the asteroid belt. You can see it all around the system. It used to be a mining hub. These days, people don't really mine on it so much, not because it's depleted of resources, but because Cartina is protected by the Fair Chance Act. There's not really any development going on in the system. They can't expand their population beyond what they already have, and it's a little bit of an out-of-the-way system. It only has a few jump points. It's got a little Fabian jump point, though, which is very nice. It's probably interesting to visit because it's full of abandoned mining operations. So I think, personally, it would be fun.
That would be huge work to do. Just one solar system or star system. Yes, like this water planets. Don't think we can. Yes, we can only get the text from here. Ocean planets, habitat, yes. We can try to terraform this ocean, yes. That is years and years and years of work, because every planet should be like Hurston with details and maybe some outpost and city. Lots of work. That will cost lots of money. Yes, but let's look the video.
Ghost mining stations and see what you can find. Let's move on to Kano 3. Hi. Hello, Kano 3. Kano 3 is a terrestrial smog planet. Smog planet is a...
Kano 3, we have a small outpost with one researcher. I think the researcher is trying to terraform the planet, I'm not sure. But we have a research station. I remember that.
Another term that we use in the game that isn't a real scientific term, but it communicates what we want to communicate, which is that it is a planet that's very hot with a high-pressure toxic atmosphere that's
It have an outpost,
which is Venus. So what makes Kano 3 interesting is that it has a pressurized research station on it that is dedicated to finding ways to possibly terraform smog planets, which is sort of like the Xi'an station that they have, I think, in the Palace system. But I would need to double check, look that up, since it's been a long time since I have done the lore makers on the system that has that particular terraforming station in it.
Oh, we have a number 1 for.
Kano 4 is
I
the
did
last
not see
planet in the
that.
system. It is a gas giant. We would very much like it one day for the art to look like how we describe it, which is a green grass giant with like a bunch of spots on it with rust color bands. It's peppered by asteroids over the years. So I guess these little spots sort of communicate that a little bit, but I'd like it to be really obvious. And it's, even for a gas giant, it's a very stormy planet. So it's hard to harvest resources here, although it is possible.